Have you ever looked at someone and thought, wait, is that really the same person? That's exactly what millions of people said when they saw recent photos of Marie Osmond. The internet basically exploded. People were comparing pictures of her from the 70s to pictures from just a few years ago, and honestly, some folks couldn't believe it was the same woman. Some even called her an imposter. Can you imagine that? A woman who's been famous for over 50 years suddenly being accused of not being herself. But here's the thing. The real story behind Marie's appearance isn't what you think. It's actually way more complicated and honestly pretty heartbreaking. So stick around because we're going to dive deep into what really happened to Marie Osmond's face and why this whole situation tells us something important about Hollywood and the pressure to stay forever young. Let me take you back to where it all started. Marie Osmond was born in October of 1959 in a small city in Utah. She wasn't just any kid, though. She was born into a family that was already dealing with a lot. Her parents had 9 children total, and Marie was the only girl. But here's what made things really tough. Her 2 oldest brothers were born completely deaf. Doctors actually told her parents not to have any more kids because they were worried the same thing would happen again. But her parents kept going anyway. They believed it was meant to be. When Marie was born with perfect hearing, her parents felt like it was a miracle. All the younger kids after her could hear too. So in a way, Marie's birth changed everything for that family. But being the miracle child came with a price that no little kid should ever have to pay. Marie's father ran their home like it was a military camp. I'm not exaggerating. When she was only 3 years old, her brother would play a bugle every morning to wake everyone up like they were soldiers. They had to say yes, sir, and thank you, sir, at meals. There was no playing outside, no just being a kid. Everything was about practice and rehearsals and more practice. While other 3-year-olds were watching cartoons and playing with toys, Marie was learning songs in Swedish so she could perform in Europe. Can you even imagine that? A toddler learning foreign language songs for business tours? It sounds insane, but that was her reality. And the reason behind all this pressure was money. The family was drowning in debt. Medical bills for her deaf brothers were piling up. Her dad had lost about $25,000 on failed businesses. That might not sound like a ton of money now, but back then in the early 60s, that was worth over $200,000 in today's money. They were so broke that they had to sell their farm and move to Los Angeles. Some nights they literally slept in their cars. So Marie started performing not because she loved singing, but because her family needed money to survive. Imagine being 4 or 5 years old and knowing that if you don't do your job right, your family might not have food. That's the kind of pressure Marie lived with every single day. Her first big television appearance happened when she was just 4 years old. She went on The Andy Williams Show in February of 1964. Most people watching thought it was adorable. A cute little girl singing on TV. But behind the scenes, this was serious business. Her brothers already had a contract worth $50,000, and the producers wanted to see if Marie could join them. She had to work 18-hour days. Think about that for a second. 18 hours. She was 4 years old and working longer days than most adults do now. She had to memorize scripts she couldn't even read yet. And here's something that will make you angry. Producers were already making comments about her weight when she was only 4 years old. 4. That was the very beginning of a battle with body image that would haunt Marie for her entire life. By the time she was 10 years old, Marie wasn't living like a normal kid at all. She was touring the world with her brothers. They traveled in cramped trailers, sometimes sleeping in storage compartments. She was tracking ticket sales with her mom and handling money after shows. She had adult responsibilities before most kids are allowed to walk to school by themselves. Then in 1971, everything exploded. Her brother's song, One Bad Apple, hit #1, and suddenly the Osmond family had real money. They bought big houses. They had fancy stuff. But Marie still felt left out. She was just the girl in a family of boys. The brothers were the real stars, and she was kind of pushed to the side. Everything changed for Marie in August of 1973. She recorded her very first solo song called Paper Roses, and it became a massive hit. She had just turned 14 years old. The song went to #1 on the country charts. It hit #5 on the main Billboard chart. It even went to #2 in the United Kingdom. Her album sold over 500,000 copies. For a 14-year-old, that's absolutely incredible. But success came with new problems. Her record label wanted her to act older than she was. They picked songs that sounded like they were written for adults, not a teenage girl. They pushed her into musical styles she didn't even like. Marie loved country music, but they made her record whatever would sell better. Even at 14, she wasn't allowed to be herself. Then came 1974, and this is where things got really scary. Marie had been performing constantly, doing show after show to promote her second album. And then her voice just gave out. She was only 15 years old, but when doctors examined her vocal cords, they were shocked. Her voice showed damage that they normally only see in adults who've been singing professionally for many years. She had to cancel shows. Her family panicked because Marie was making millions of dollars for the Osmond brand, and without her voice, everything could fall apart. There's actual footage from that time where you can see her struggling to sing, fighting back tears on stage. She was completely exhausted, but nobody made her stop. The machine just kept rolling. By 1975, she was fighting with her own family over her music. She released an album that was more pop than country because she wanted to try new things. Her brothers didn't like it. They thought she was hurting the family brand. She was only 16 years old, but she had to fight for the right to choose her own music. That same year, she went on tour in Japan, and it was absolutely crazy. Fans screamed and fainted like she was a member of the Beatles. She needed police escorts just to move through crowds. But behind all that fame, Marie was doing over 200 shows a year. That schedule would destroy most adults. For a teenager, it was unbearable. And nobody stopped it because the money was too good. Then in January of 1976, something historic happened. Marie and her brother Donnie were offered their own variety show on ABC. Donnie was 18. Marie was just 16. When the show aired on January 23rd, almost 14 million people watched. Week after week, they kept watching. The show was colorful and fun. Every episode ended with balloons falling from the ceiling while they sang together. They were the youngest hosts in TV history, and they were succeeding at a time when variety shows were already dying out. But what the audience couldn't count. TC was the nightmare Marie was living through. She was working 18 hours a day with barely any sleep. She still had to study with a tutor for school, then go home and do chores. And then the really terrible part started. Producers told her she was too fat. Let me say that again. Marie weighed 103 pounds, and they told her she needed to lose 10 more pounds or they would cancel the show. 103 pounds. She was already tiny. But she was so terrified of losing the show that she started starving herself. Her weight dropped to 93 pounds. She could barely stay awake. She started seeing her own body in ways that weren't real. And the abuse got even worse. They literally dragged her into parking lots and called her a fat pig. Can you imagine how damaging that would be to a teenage girl? The psychological damage from that abuse stayed with her for decades. It never really went away. In 1978, Marie's body finally gave up. She collapsed on the set. She was dehydrated and completely exhausted. Her team tried to hide it from the media because they couldn't risk damaging the show's clean image. But Marie was falling apart inside. Still, she showed up. She performed. She smiled, because she believed she had to keep going for her family and her fans. The show eventually got canceled in 1979, but the damage to Marie's body and mind was already done. The years of being starved and judged had created habits that would haunt her forever. She developed a cycle of binge eating and then fasting for days. Her metabolism never recovered. She couldn't even look in a mirror without feeling horror. For years after the show ended, Marie tried different things. She tried acting in movies, but critics said she wasn't good enough for serious roles. She tried Broadway in 1982, playing Maria in The Sound of Music, but the reviews were brutal. The show ended early, and she had to step away from the spotlight just to heal. That failure haunted her for over a decade. But then in 1985, something amazing happened. Marie made a huge comeback in country music. Her album There's No Stopping Your Heart exploded. Her duet Meet Me in Montana hit #1. It was her first #1 song since Paper Roses back in 1973, 12 years earlier. She moved her family to Nashville and performed over 300 shows a year. She played wherever they would have her, even walking through muddy cowfields to get to small venues. The hard work paid off. It was a fresh start. Then Marie did something really smart. In 1986, she started designing porcelain dolls and selling them on QVC. This wasn't just a little side project. She controlled everything herself. She designed each doll, and people went crazy for them. One doll that she based on her own mother sold 3 million units in just 15 minutes. Over time, she created designs that brought in more than $50 million. People said she was just using her fame to make money, but she proved she had real business skills. She wasn't just a performer anymore. She was an entrepreneur. In 2008, Marie and Donnie launched a show in Las Vegas at the Flamingo Hotel. Nobody expected it to last long, but it ran for 11 years. They did over 1,200 shows by the time it ended in November of 2019. It became the longest-running singing duo act in Vegas history. At their peak, they were each making over $1.5 million a year, plus they got part of the ticket sales. The Flamingo even renamed the theater after them. The final night was incredibly emotional. They sang their old closing song, and the entire crowd cried with them. But while her career had its ups and downs, Marie's personal life was even more complicated. She got married for the first time in 1982 to a basketball player named Stephen Craig. They had a big wedding in front of 4,000 people. A year later, they had a son. But by 1985, the marriage was over. Marie filed for divorce, saying there had been mental cruelty. The pressure of balancing motherhood and fame was too much. In 1986, she married again, this time to a music producer. They stayed together for 21 years and had 7 children, 2 biological and 5 adopted. But after her son Matthew was born in July of 1999, something terrifying happened. Marie fell into a deep depression. Her body would shake. Her thoughts spiraled out of control. She honestly believed her children would be better off without her. One day, she left the baby with a babysitter, gave her a credit card, and just drove off along the California coast with no idea where she was going. She disappeared for 3 whole days. Her husband had to track her down over the phone. She ended up in a motel, scared and completely broken. Doctors put her on medication, but she hated how it made her feel nothing at all. No sadness, but also no happiness or joy. The absolute worst pain in Marie's life came on February 26, 2010. Her adopted son, Michael, who was only 18 years old, jumped from his apartment building in Los Angeles. He had been struggling with depression, especially after Marie and her second husband divorced in 2007. He was in his first year at fashion school. Just days before he died, he told Marie he had no friends. Those words haunted her because she understood that feeling too well. At his funeral, Michael's father didn't even show up. But then something unexpected and beautiful happened. On May 4th, 2011, exactly 29 years after their first wedding, Marie remarried her first husband, Stephen. It was like a complete circle. And get this, Marie found her original wedding dress from 1982 just 5 days before the ceremony. It was hidden in an old box in her garage. She had already bought a new dress, but it didn't feel right, and the date she chose wasn't random. May 4th was both her mother's birthday and her late son Michael's birthday. Marie said she wanted them both to be there in spirit. She and Stephen had been secretly seeing each other for 2 years before the wedding, keeping it quiet in case things didn't work out again. They got married quietly in a Las Vegas temple. It was her way of healing. In 2009, Marie did something that shocked many people in her religious community. She publicly supported her daughter Jessica, who is gay. She went on the radio and said Jessica was magnificent and deserved equal rights. She even attended Jessica's wedding. Many conservative members of her church got angry. People called her out and said she was going against her faith. But Marie didn't back down. She said civil rights should be for everyone. Her words were powerful, but they caused deep divisions in her fan base. Marie also dealt with physical pain that most people didn't know about. After years of dancing on stage, her knees were badly damaged. During one of her Las Vegas shows, she fell and actually chipped off a piece of her kneecap. In 2015, she had multiple knee surgeries, but she didn't talk much about it publicly. She just kept performing because there was so much pressure to look perfect and never show weakness. In her 2001 book called Behind the Smile, Marie revealed something incredibly painful. She had been sexually abused as a teenager in the 1970s. The person who did it was someone involved in her career, not a family member or friend. She said she was threatened and lived in fear. The trauma was so severe that it changed how she saw herself for years. She struggled with body image and self-worth, and the abuse was a huge reason why she had such a hard time later in life. In 2023, Marie finally spoke openly about the body shaming she endured when she was just 15 years old. She said a producer pulled her into a parking lot and told her she was fat and an embarrassment. She was 5'5" and weighed 103 pounds. It crushed her. From that moment on, she started starving herself before TV tapings because she was terrified of looking wrong. That humiliation stayed with her for decades and added to her battles with how she saw her own body. And this brings us to the transformation that everyone's been talking about. In March of 2024, Marie appeared on a podcast, and instead of people caring about what she had to say, they only focused on her face. She was 64 years old, but many people said she looked like a completely different person. Side-by-side pictures from the 1970s and 2024 went viral all over the internet. The comments were brutal. People accused her of going too far with plastic surgery. Some even called her an imposter. It didn't stop. The hate just kept coming. In 2025, Marie finally responded to all the criticism. She admitted she had gotten Botox and laser treatments. She also had breast reduction surgery because of back pain, but she strongly denied getting major surgeries like a facelift. Even so, experts who looked at her photos said there were clear changes in her jawline and neck. In one video from 2022, where she was promoting a weight loss program, her skin looked much tighter than you'd expect for someone her age. The pressure to always look young had completely taken over the conversation, and it made Marie feel like people forgot who she really was as a person. By April of 2025, Marie had had enough. She announced on Instagram that she was stepping away from social media to focus on her family. She had already been offline for 9 months. She said the constant criticism over her looks and her past had worn her down. At 65 years old, she just wanted peace. She said she had always tried to listen to her heart, and now her heart was telling her to unplug and be with the people who truly matter. After so much loss, so much pain, and so much judgment, Marie was finally choosing to protect herself. So what's the real truth about Marie Osmond's transformation? Here's what we know for sure. Marie admitted to having some cosmetic procedures like Botox and laser treatments. She also had medical surgery for her breasts because of back pain, but she's been clear that she didn't have major facial surgery. Whether you believe that or not kind of misses the bigger point. The real issue is that Marie Osmond has been judged for her appearance since she was 4 years old. 4. She was told she was fat when she weighed 93 pounds. She was abused and starved and criticized for decades. And now, at 65, people are still judging her face instead of listening to her story. The sad truth is that Hollywood and the entertainment industry have always been brutal to women, especially when it comes to aging. Men can grow old and get called distinguished. Women get criticized for every wrinkle and every change. Marie has lived through over 60 years of this pressure. She's been through abuse, depression, the loss of a child, divorce, and constant public scrutiny. If she chose to get treatments to help herself feel better, can we really blame her? And if she didn't get major surgery, and people just can't accept that she's aged, isn't that even sadder? Marie Osmond's story isn't really about her face at all. It's about a little girl who never got to be a child. It's about a woman who was exploited by an industry that valued her appearance and her voice more than her humanity. It's about someone who has survived unimaginable pain and is still here, still trying to find peace. Whether her face looks different because of procedures, or just because she's 65 years old, honestly doesn't matter. What matters is that we recognize the decades of trauma and pressure that led to this moment. Marie stepped away from social media because she finally realized something that took her whole life to learn. Her worth isn't in how she looks or what people think of her. It's in who she is and the people she loves. After everything she's been through, she deserves to live her life in peace without the constant judgment of millions of strangers on the internet. So the next time you see before and after photos of a celebrity and feel tempted to leave a harsh comment, remember Marie's story. Remember that behind every face is a real person with real pain and a real life. Maybe instead of criticizing, we could choose compassion. Maybe instead of judging, we could listen. Because at the end of the day, Marie Osmond's transformation isn't about surgery or Botox or anything medical. It's about a woman who finally decided she's had enough of being judged and is choosing herself for once. If this story moved you or made you think differently about celebrity culture and the pressure to look perfect, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep telling real stories about real people. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think about Marie's journey and the way we treat celebrities as they age. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.